What is an emotional support animal? An emotional support animal is a pet that provides disability relieving emotional support to an individual, but it is not necessarily trained to do so. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, which covers service dog laws, it does not allow emotional support animals to go out into public places where dogs or animals are normally prohibited. Emotional support animal owners do have certain legal rights in housing and when flying, allowing their pets to be with them regardless of animal policy. They are, however, supposed to be trained for flight access. Emotional support animals can be very important residential companions for people with disabilities that an emotional support animal can mitigate. Some may even have the temperament to undergo the training needed to work as a psychiatric service dog, permitted that the person's psychiatric conditions are severe enough to require a service dog. They are not required to be trained. Emotional support animals are not required to be trained, although they should be properly trained and socialized just like any other pet dog. Just them being around you makes you feel better. Emotional support animals are not registered or certified. You must have a doctor's note to have an emotional support animal. Certifications and registrations are fake and illegal and would not hold up in court. What is a therapy dog? A therapy dog is one dog trained for everyone. They bring happiness and comfort to hospital patients, assisted living centers, nursing home residents, doctor offices, homeless families living in shelters, and students to help relieve anxiety or stress at school. Therapy dogs are friendly and outgoing when meeting people, but they do remain calm and don't get overexcited, and they are always obedient. They are socialized to a variety of people, places, and things. Therapy dogs are required to be trained in basic manners and obedience and are required to take continuing education workshops throughout their career. Therapy dogs and their owners provide opportunities for petting and affection in a variety of settings on a volunteer basis. Unlike a service dog, a therapy dog is just a pet trained to interact with many people other than its handler alone to make those people feel better. Therapy dogs are trained to behave safely around all sorts of people and places. They are required to undergo special training and be certified when their training is finished. Online registration and certification is fake and not legal and would not hold up in a court. They must undergo proper training and certification. A therapy dog does not have public access rights to the service dog laws under the ADA. The handler is not able to take the dog out everywhere like a service dog user because the handler does not have a disability and the dog is not individually trained to mitigate that disability. Therapy dogs are only allowed in places like hospitals, skilled nursing facilities, libraries, and what I said earlier, by prior agreements of the facility. Again, not by service dog ADA laws. It is cautioned against using a dog as both a service dog and therapy dog in most cases. This is both to ensure the dog has adequate downtime to relax, preventing physical and mental burnout, and because service dogs are trained to ignore other people, which is the opposite of therapy dogs who are trained to welcome and please everyone. Not saying it cannot be done, but it should be taken cautiously and carefully to ensure that your service dog is able to assist you before anyone else. What is a service dog in training? Before a dog becomes a service dog, it must undergo a lot of training. This can be done by the owner alone, by the owner with help from a professional trainer, by a professional trainer independently, or with the program. Typically, a dog is a service dog in training only after it has undergone basic socialization, potty training, basic obedience training, and training roughly to the point at which it could pass the American Kennel Club's Canine Good Citizen test. The essential idea is that the dog must reliably be able to be safely in public, pets prohibited places, for its training, while keeping the training and stimulus recovery under threshold for each member of the team. If the dog remains a good candidate for service work after this point, and there is a plan being executed for the dog to be trained for good public behavior and to help deal with someone's disability, the dog can be considered a service dog in training. Service dog training is a long, hard, detailed process. Dogs must be able to perform their task on command and have to perform skills that would allow them to pass a public access test. None of the public access test and the Canine Good Citizen test, they are not required, but it is nice that your dog could pass them if you ever did take them. I lost my thought. Okay, yeah, service dog training is a long, hard, detailed process. Dogs must be able to perform their tasks on command and have to perform skills that would allow them to pass a public access test. A series of objectives designed to evaluate the dog's behavior in distracting environments. It takes about 1 to 2 years to train a service dog. During that time, the ADA federal law does not apply. Instead, you may be covered by state laws. Every state has a different law regarding service dogs and service dogs in training, and some have no regulations. It's always good to check state laws that you may be traveling to or through if you have a service dog in training. Read your state laws to find out what types of disabilities are covered and to see if you must get a special tag or license to be covered for service dog in training laws and access. The ADA does not require a service dog to have any special ID tag or certification, but since they do not cover service dogs in training, you must follow your state laws. If your state requires you have a tag for your service dog in training for you to have public access, then you have to follow that law. What is a service dog? A service dog is a dog specifically trained to mitigate a disability its handler has. A service dog is a dog for one person and performs specific tasks to help that person cope with a disability. Service dogs must be handler focused, desensitized to distractions, and highly trained to do specific tasks. They should not be distracted by the public, as they should focus solely on their owner when working. For service dogs, training can last up to 2 years. Service dogs usually wear a vest to identify them as a service dog, and it asks the public not to pet them. They legally are not required to wear one. Every service dog must be trained in tasking, skills specific to the handler's disability and public access skills. ADA regulations state that a service dog also must be house trained and under control at all times in public. Not every dog can be a service dog. Regardless of the dog's breed, all service dogs need a special set of qualities in order to be reliable in their work. These characteristics include calm but friendly, alert but not reactive, able to be touched by anyone, including strangers, willingness to please, the tendency to follow you around, socialized to many different situations and environments, ability to learn quickly and retain information. Basic foundation skills should be potty on command, focus on handler and ignore distractions, all AKC Canine Good Citizen objectives. Whether you take the test or not, the dog should be able to pass if you were to perform a home test. Public access skills and basic obedience. Service dogs and their handlers have a responsibility each time they go into a public place. The team should be relaxed and present a positive image for service dogs. Some public access standards including, but not limited to, controlled loading into and unloading out of a vehicle, controlled approach to a building, controlled entry and exit through a doorway, heeling through a building, 6-foot recall on lead, sit on command in various situations, down on command in various situations, control in a restaurant, control when a leash is dropped. The main task of a service dog is to perform a task specific to the handler's disability. Often, service dogs perform a range of behaviors that qualify as tasks in addition to providing unconditional love and companionship to the handler. Because let's face it, we spoil our service dogs with tons of treats, toys, and love when we are at home and they are off duty. Commonly known tasks include guiding people who are blind or have limited eyesight, alerting people who are deaf or have limited hearing, to noises like ringing phones, sirens, alarms, pulling a wheelchair and retrieving dropped items. However, not all disabilities are obvious or visible, and service dog tasks can include alerting a person with a seizure disorder or diabetes to an oncoming attack or blood sugar high or low, reminding a person to take their prescribed medications, calming a person with PTSD during an attack, not just by being there, but through training to do specific things during a PTSD anxiety episode to calm their handler, like deep pressure therapy. Service dogs can be used for many things. These are just a few. A service dog can be looked at as a living, breathing, assistive device for someone with a disability. Service dogs are sometimes compared to wheelchairs in their ability to help their disabled partners live more independent lives. Since service dogs are not primarily kept for companionship, they are not considered pets but medical equipment. The Americans with Disabilities Act essentially requires 3 things for a dog to be a service dog. First, the person helped must have a life-limiting disability. Second, the dog must be trained to recognize and respond to the handler's disability by doing either work or task. Third, the dog must not cause a disruption in public, otherwise the dog can be legally asked to leave. Service dogs must be both housebroken and leashed, except when the dog needs to be off-leash to provide disability-related work or task, or if that person's disability is too dangerous for a dog to be on leash, like seizures. Service dogs are not legally required to have any special identification or vest. It is illegal for anyone to require any sort of documentation. You can ask, is it a service dog required for a disability, and what task is it trained to do? I'm losing my spot. Because service dogs have public access into restaurants, stores, and the cabin area of a plane, some people obtain fake service dog credentials just because they want their dog to be with them. For a certain amount of money and minimal application standards, a dog owner can receive a fake vest and certificate for an untrained pet. This is unethical and detrimental to the well-being and safety of working service dogs and their owners. The exploitation of service dog laws is a federal crime, meaning it is highly illegal to fake a service dog. Service dogs are generally allowed with their disabled users wherever the general public is allowed. This includes grocery stores, theaters, restaurants, non-sterile hospital areas, and public transportation. In addition to these rights, service dog handlers have the responsibility to make sure their service dogs are housebroken and otherwise under control. Public entities cannot be held responsible for the care or supervision of service dogs and can ask that an animal, service dog or not, be removed if its actions cause a disturbance, repeated barking in a library, aggressive behavior, so forth and so on. Service dogs are not considered the same as pets. A service dog user cannot be charged extra fees to engage in an activity any other individual without a pet would not be charged for, assuming the service dog does not somehow cause property damage where you would be liable to pay the fee. If it is obvious a service dog is acting as a service dog, users should not have challenges to their access. If a dog's service dog status is not obvious, a business cannot ask about a person's disability or require work or task performance or documentation of any kind, but may ask only 2 questions to figure out whether the dog is a service dog. 1, is the dog a service animal required because of the disability? 2, what task or work has the dog been trained to perform? I know I went over that twice, but just making sure everyone hears me. So what about others' allergies and fears? Allergies and fears of dogs may rise to the level of disability, although they commonly do not. Non-disabling allergies and fears are not covered by the Americans with Disabilities Act. This does not mean that they do not deserve polite treatment whenever possible, regardless of the law. When allergies or fears rise to the level of disability, people with these conditions merit reasonable accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act as well, just like those with disabilities who use service dogs. Usually, both parties can be accommodated in a location by staying away from one another. What exactly is reasonable depends largely on the specifics of the situation, but a little respect and empathy on both sides go a long way. So, if I go to a restaurant and she's allergic to dogs, I could be moved, maybe to a couple of tables down to where I'm not on the table next to her. But it's illegal to discriminate and segregate me and not allow me in and not allow me to sit with the rest of the people and put me over in the corner by myself. You can't do that. Same with being fearful of animals. How might my dog be covered in housing situations? One moment. No wonder it's so hot I opened the window. The law that covers access and housing situations for both service animals and emotional support animals is the Fair Housing Act. The agency responsible, which has the FHACT, The agency responsible for the Fair Housing Act regulations is the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. HUD uses assistant animal roughly as an umbrella term for service animals and emotional support animals. In many housing situations, the ADA and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 also apply. Service dogs are generally allowed to live in no-pet housing. Users do not have to pay pet-related fees, barring damage to the domicile. If your service dog destroys something, you are going to have to pay for it. If your housing is not covered by the ADA or your dog is not yet a full service dog, your landlord can request proof that you have a disability and thus need the help of an assistance animal, unless your disability and need for the dog is apparent or known. This proof is usually accomplished with a letter from your doctor. Many housing facilities are covered by the ADA. In those facilities, the housing provider may only require answers to the standard 2 ADA questions if you have a service dog and an inconspicuous disability and they don't know your disability status. For those questions, again, is the service dog required for a disability and what task is it trained to perform? But they cannot ask to see the task. Emotional support animals, which are not the same as psychiatric service dogs, are also allowed in housing situations. How can I fly with a service dog, or a psychiatric service dog specifically? When flying, you are no longer covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Instead, you are covered under the Air Carrier Access Act, the ACAA. Various laws affect access in airports, but generally the ADA regulations apply there. If a passenger is traveling with a service dog exclusively for a psychiatric disability, the passenger can be required to provide a detailed letter stating the handler has a disability and needs the assistance of the animal during the flight or at their destination. Such a letter can also be required of passengers traveling with an emotional support animal, which are different. Passengers with service dogs that are not exclusively used to only mitigate a psychiatric disability can fly without any documentation. This discrimination is something that PSDP is working to fix. So if you have a psychiatric service dog, but he also helps with your medical problems,